over the last 2 months, Russian losses across the front line may have exceeded even the highest analyst expectations. This is according to the UK Ministry of Defense Intelligence Agency. So we are going to talk about just what this means for the front line, why Putin is willing to lose just so many soldiers, and if this is a sign that the Russian war machine might actually be losing steam. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is really interesting. This is the defense intelligence update from yesterday from, again, the UK's Ministry of Defense. So this is a really credible source. The UK works really hard to put out what, in their assessment, is the correct statements. And this is discussing the level of Russian casualties in May and June 2024, right? The killed and wounded numbers are absolutely staggeringly high. In total, they assess Russia likely lost, either had killed or wounded, in excess of 70,000 personnel over the last 2 months. Now, this is a really important metric. And the reason it's so important is because it's 35,000 a month. Because we know that Russian recruitment efforts currently pedal to the metal. As high as they can generate troops are bringing in 25,000 troops a month. That means that they are having almost 50% more casualties than they can sustain. And for Ukraine, that is core to their strategy. At some point, Russia will run out of Russians. That is fundamental to the idea. And again, Putin is unwilling to do a general mobilization. So he relies on kind of coercing conscripts, recruiting foreign nationals, recruiting from prisons. And so the result is a very low caliber of Russian soldier, but it also means that those are very limited pipelines that they can draw in. And we've seen it. We've seen the average Russian soldier looking older. I don't want to say more decrepit, but they certainly often have the appearance of soldiers who might have substance use issues or severe mental illnesses, people who just are already on the margins of Russian society. And so the longer this goes on, it sometimes is referred to as a organizational death spiral, right? This is where you have a role in which there is attrition, but performing the role requires extensive training. Pilots are the classic example, but light infantry forces are another great example, right? Up here, you have an experienced, seasoned, NATO-trained, like a U.S. caliber infantry squad, right? Well, let's say that squad experiences a high attrition rate, and the replacements are trained to a high standard, but they don't quite draw on the same amount of experience. What happens? Well, that squad is going to have to go through that learning curve in combat, and that means they're going to incur casualties at an even greater rate. So now you have this third generation of soldiers, and they had to get fielded even faster. So maybe they cut a few weeks off their training. Well, that infantry squad has even less battlefield survivability, so they get attrited. And now you see how, as the cycle goes on and on and on, what you end up with is this race to the bottom in which infantry units, right? I'm using a squad, but companies, brigades, are so poorly trained, they incur casualties at such a high rate that again, you basically end up with the way Russia's running this war. Extremely, extremely poor quality fighting men. They're all men, basically. Extremely limited training and extremely high casualty rates and almost no accrued experience, right? If you have a mission with 80% casualties, statistically, there is a less than 1% chance that you're going to survive 4 missions. And so that means that no one in the Russian military has any experience below probably the company commander or battalion commander level. At least, again, in the light infantry roles. Specialist roles like artillery crews and drone operators, it seems like Russia works hard to keep those soldiers more protected because they're more professional. They're literally better trained. But for Ukraine, this represents an opportunity. If they can keep this kill rate up, then they will force Russia, again, to field ever more low quality troops. But this comes with a price. And before we talk about it, if you're interested in seeing kind of the uncensored, raw combat footage of showing just how far the Russian military has fallen, you want to become a member of Combat Vet News. This is the way to support the channel. You guys know YouTube, not the biggest fan of war content, but I believe this is important for you guys to know. So I'm going to do it no matter what, but I rely on you guys to support me. So if you want access to the twice a week, we go in, we find the viral combat videos that have dropped in the last week. Sometimes they're as little as 48 hours old, and we do a deep dive analysis of the units, the tactics, who's doing it, where, why, and when. And it's really great insight. And remember, if you become a member, you get access, to the new drops, but you also get access to the archive drops. You have almost a year of twice weekly videos where you can literally see, as the videos progress, the Russian military becoming steadily less and less capable, but also at the same time adapting to kind of the madness of this drone-heavy battlefield. So if you want to support us, right, the specialist tier gets you access to those members-only combat videos. But if you join the lieutenant tier, you get access to that, plus the weekly Q&A. You can ask questions, and you get the shout outs at the end of videos. And if you really want to support what I do, if you really appreciate it and you've got the spare cash to do it, you can become a Colonel tier, get the members only video, the weekly Q&A video, the shout outs by name, and the golden recognition at the end of the videos. Anyway, let's talk about what Russia is getting with 70,000 troops killed or wounded buys you. And the answer is actually quite a bit, right? Sure. In the last 24 hours, we've seen the Ukrainians kick the Russians out of this Sotnietsky Kozachok, and that's great. But this is never really more than a border incursion. The real problem is that Russian forces are advancing slowly, steadily, amid tremendous casualties across the front line. You can see them making, again, not tons of progress, but in the Donetsk region, every day they make a little bit of progress. Again, a few dozen Russian soldiers were killed or had life-altering injuries to get this what maybe 100 meters of forest, but it moved them ever closer, right? And you see, this is the case across the front line. Again, here we have Novoselivka Persha. You can see Russian forces, again, advancing toward the town, a few 100 meters. Not really a game changer in the grand scheme of things, but it still is driving the Ukrainian forces back further and further. And this is sort of the core strategy that Russia's pursuing now, is these kind of gradual pushes wherever they can do it. Reportedly, some of the toughest fighting, where Russia's pushing the hardest, is near Sumy, Toretsk, and New York. And I think this is part of a Russian sort of pincer effort, maybe to kind of put pressure on Toretsk from two different directions. But it's a really tough situation to be fighting in. And you can see that it's part of this Russian strategy. But look at we're working backwards in time. See how gradual Russian forces are making these advances, and they're just sort of taking what they can here and there, grabbing it, right? There was a little bit of a breakthrough here near Yurivka, but it looks like Ukraine sort of stabilized that. But this is how they're fighting, in these gradual little piecemeal advances. Again, at tremendous cost, but they are the ones advancing. Again, are they going to seize are they going to take Kharkiv? No, unlikely. They're going to take some open fields, some forests, some little towns that have been obliterated, but that's all can potentially add up. And again, for Putin, it gives by Putin's own metrics of victory, he is winning. 70,000 people to take a couple of villages in the east is a great deal if you're someone like Putin. And so by that metric, he considers himself to be winning, which is one of the reasons he really does not want to negotiate for peace right now. But the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense, announced 2 days ago, military aid package for Ukraine, $225 million. Think of this as a sort of packing up piece by piece the aid package that was passed a couple months ago. So this isn't on top of that 60 billion. This is just another tranche, right? And it includes, of course, a Patriot air defense battery, munitions for the National Surface-to-Air Missile System, Stinger missiles, high mobility, HIMARS ammunition, 155 and 105 arty rounds, tow missiles, tow equipment and missiles. So it's certainly going to be inflicting some pain on the Russian armored forces for sure. But again, that's supposedly, according to some analysis, been actually one of Putin's biggest liabilities. It's not his ability to get troops, it's his ability to get vehicles. Because again, right now they are refurbishing Soviet stock still, but it's not clear how much longer they can do that. And once they're out of Soviet stock, they're going to have to find a way to build tanks and APCs from scratch. And that is a tall order for a country like Russia. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Thank you to our Colonel tier members, including Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Giles Manwaring, Eugenio Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, and Fran Zacharias, excuse me. Plus all our Lieutenant tier members. Be sure to become a member. The link is in the description if you want to check us out at Combat Vet News and join us over there. Thanks. Cheers.